What is the most bullshit reason for a teacher to give you a bad grade? When I was in college, I had a professor walking around collecting a homework assignment that was about 10% of our grade. Being the unorganized person that I am, I'm digging through my folders trying to find which one has it. She walks by me as I'm still looking, and meanders toward her podium. Before she even gets to the front of the class, I find it, and run up to her to hand it in. She looks me dead in the eyes, and says,
"That's late. You get a 0.
I called her a string of horrible things, she really was. This was just the final straw, dropped the course, and took it again with an amazing professor the next semester.
This would be an A paper from some other students, but you can do better.
I got a C and no other feedback on how to improve. Edit, thanks for the gold, and for all the comments. It seems I'm not alone in this one.
Your mistake was being too awesome on your previous papers.
Apparently so. I didn't think I'd phoned it in on that one, but maybe it seemed like it. Still, that comment really should have come with at least one area for improvement.
Area of improvement: learn that overachieving only leads to more work. No job promotions, because you become indispensable at your job, and non-monetary achievement certificates to hang in your cubicle.
That teacher did you a favor, to be honest. Wish I was joking.
Can you please tell me at least what I should have done differently?
I'm docking you another half grade, because you should already know that. I'm so disappointed in you.
This is my mother. No exaggeration.
Not a bad grade, but I remember I was so close to being the first person to ever score a 100% on my 10th grade Spanish final. The one question I got wrong was,
¿Qué tipo de comida es el pescado?
what type of food is fish?
A. El carne.
Meat.
B. La fruta.
Fruit.
C. El pan.
Bread.
D. La verdura.
Vegetable. I, of course, picked meat, and got it wrong, because my teacher insisted that fish isn't meat. She's a Catholic, and eats fish on Fridays during Lent. According to her, the correct answer is fruit, because fish are sometimes known as the fruit of the sea. What the actual Cram your 99%, Señorita.
My friend failed French, because she had a French accent. And the teacher couldn't understand her French, because she was American. My friend had spoke French since she was 4.
Took Spanish class in high school. Half the class was either born in Mexico, or first-generation American with Mexican parents, but apparently, Mexican Spanish isn't real Spanish, and would mark them down for having accents.
Our Spanish teacher was fired after he failed the whole class, including his born and raised for the first 10 years of her life in Mexico daughter.
I got 10 out of 10 on a test, but my teacher took points away from me, because she didn't want my classmates to be jealous of my grade. This was English class in a Dutch school, so English is a requirement. I was the only native English speaker in my class, and this was a course for adults only.
I broke my right arm in 3rd grade. I write with my right hand. The teacher gave me a bad grade, because my handwriting with my left hand was barely legible.
In 3rd or 4th grade, some girl in my class broke her right arm, and the teacher did the same to her. And after the poor girl got upset about it, the teacher compromised by assigning some other girl to do her writing for her. They both had to sit at the very back of the room together, so the one girl could quietly dictate to the other all of her writing needs. Everything from multiple choice stuff to full-on creative writing assignments. And the girl who had to do the writing still also had to do her own work, and was given no extra time as far as I know. Didn't happen to me, but a teacher kinda gave everyone in a class bad grades, because they ditched her. They all planned to hang out after the last class. Guess she was bitter about it.
Ha. She was like, I got one last lesson for you assholes.
Did the teacher want to hang out with kindergarteners, or college students?
Both are pretty weird, to be honest.
Is it? When I was in university, we would often hang out with the teachers. Especially if they were a grad student teaching the class. It was really common to hit the bar after class, maybe even for a study session. Or a Friday night. Hell. In senior design class, after a particularly rough day, the teacher took us all out to a local microbrewery for a round.
Because he didn't read my paper. It was a university class where a teacher's assistant was responsible for grading the papers. He was clearly overwhelmed, and just reading introductions, and grading based on them alone. I had a 2-part introduction that fully addressed the prompt, but as he only read the first part, I got my paper back with a big C at the top. I ended up getting full credit after I challenged the initial grade.
Glad you had a better result. My first large college paper, for a pre-Civil War history class, freshman year came back with a giant red, written on it with practically no feedback. I was in a writing program, and I had always excelled at essays, so I was sort of shocked. Went to the professor, and asked him about the grade, and lack of instruction. He sighed, looked down, and said,
Westhoff, I don't like you.
He went on, and on after that with some bullshit reasons, but apparently the big issue came from the first week of class. He was talking about manifest destiny, and said something like,
Now you have to remember, back in those days there were 50 to 100 miles between towns out in the western USA.
And I raised my hand, and said that there was still 50 to 100 miles between towns in the western US. He said I was exaggerating, and I told him I wasn't, because that's where I grew up. That paper was 40% of our grade. He refused to change the grade, or even reread it. I scraped a C+ in that class, and I was so proud of that grade even though it was the worst grade I received in my life. At the end of the semester, I decided to ask him for his grading documentation to see if I could challenge the paper with the school, but he claimed he had already thrown it away. I found out later that was bullshit too, but I didn't press any further.
You should have pressed, at the very least, so he doesn't try that bullshit with someone else.
Agreed. Had similar thing happen. Professor didn't like me, cause of my beard. Went to Dean, Dean tried talking to him, he refused to do anything. Dean sent my paper to another professor at our sister school who taught the same class. She reviewed it, and graded it, went from a D to a B+, I forgot to cite something, and I had a few, 2 to 3, spelling errors. Dean submitted the new grade instead, which give me a B overall in the class.
I was taking a 1-week online class. In the syllabus, the teacher said you must post 6 times throughout the week. So, I posted 6 times on Monday, 1 time on Wednesday, and felt I was good to go. I get my grade/teacher comments, and the teacher wrote,
You had some good posts early in the week, but then you stopped posting, so I had to mark you down.
I was annoyed by this, but then realized it was the last online course in the program, and frankly I didn't care. I still graduated, and that certificate is proudly sitting in my junk drawer for all to see.
Taking online courses now, and the rule in almost every single class seems to be 1 post, and comment on 2 of your classmates' posts. Every week it's the same posts. Topic is really interesting, and important. I really learned a lot, especially about that one thing they said. Then a few responses saying, I really agree. This topic really is important in today's industry.
A friend of mine got a -1 for scratching his head. Our teacher said he was faking it.
I guess that teacher had too many bad experiences with women who faked head scratches.
Fake head scratches are a real problem in our society, and they're probably what causes hurricanes.
Staples were not in the right spot for my essay even though I had them in the top left corner like always.
That's when you know the teacher doesn't like you, and is literally looking for petty reasons to take points off.
Yeah. She sucked. She was a consensus of worst teacher in the school by a long shot.
My 7th grade gym teacher gave me a D, because I hardly ever smiled. My life sucked at that time.
You seem like an unhappy kid. Let me give you something else to be unhappy about because of it.
All of middle school for every person ever.
In the 90s my family didn't have a computer, and I had no access to one. I spent a lot of time on a handwritten assignment for school, and the teacher gave me a B, writing as a comment, "I would have given you an A if you had typed it up on a computer." I'm still bitter.
I knew a girl in the early 2000s who used a typewriter, because she didn't have a printer, or a floppy disk reader in her computer.
My teacher lost my coursework on the bus home. I refused to redo a year's worth of work in 3 weeks, and I got taken from an A to a C. BullS. School sided with him.
What kind of school allows a teacher to, I assume, admit they lost coursework, and have the school go, "Oh, well. Student's fault, minus points?" That makes no sense to me.
Got points off, because of the bad grammar in the quote I used. The quote was Oppenheimer's.
I am become death. Destroyer of worlds.
I'm more shocked that they didn't recognize the quote.
I was accused of plagiarism, because I had an above-average vocabulary. I got a grade in the end, but I was ticked. It was a group project where nobody did anything. I had to do the whole thing, and turn it into a teacher who usually works with the special needs kids. She didn't think preemptive strike was a term an 8th grader should know, so obviously it was plagiarized.
I got the same for knowing what a swastika was when I was 12. I wasn't even a high achiever, or anything, just a kid who read books. Within a year the same school was showing us The World at War, the excellent World War II history documentary series from the 1970s that's narrated by Laurence Olivier, and using it as an educational resource. So basically, a 12-year-old couldn't possibly know what a swastika was, but a 13-year-old should know the ins and outs of World War II in detail, and be able to answer graded questions on it. Joined up thinking from the history department there.
I failed a literature exam in college, because I answered a question too well. We were supposed to write an essay comparing and contrasting one of the books that we read that semester to a modern concept, or ideal. We had known about this particular question for weeks, so we had had plenty of time to prepare. Apparently it's possible to be too correct, because the response I got was that, though it is clear I did not plagiarize, none of my thoughts were original, and matched too closely with the author's interpretation of the work. I was the only person in the class to not only fail, but to get less than a B. I got no other bad marks on the rest of the exam, either. He failed me based on just that one part.
Not me, but a 7-year-old student I coached for a public speaking contest. She is a child prodigy, a self-taught fluent English speaker in a country where very few people speak good English. She also has a natural sense of how to structure a speech, and gives all her speeches impromptu instead of memorizing. After she finished her speech, the first response from the judges was,
"Do you think you speak better English than us?"
Spoiler alert, she does. I spoke to them, and none of them were truly fluent. They then gave her the second lowest grade possible. She got a bad grade for being better than the person grading her.
What grown adult is that freaking threatened by a 7-year-old who has specifically been trained for the task they are judging?
A grown adult that finds a job judging 7-year-olds, that's who.
I can only give out so many A's, and other students have claimed those.
What the professor?
No, this can actually happen. In my school, if there were more than 100 students, with above 80%, the one with 90% or more got an A, and the 89 to 80% got ranked, and top half of them get an A. This was only for math, but the school did this. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out my other videos. Also, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and ring the notification bell.